Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Exciting time around the NBA. We've got Game 5 of the NBA Finals tonight. We've got all kinds of news from around the NBA. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, over on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, how are you holding up? Game 5 tonight. How are the nerves treating you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm really excited. It's funny how quickly narratives shift in the NBA Finals, because the Celtics went up 2-1 and everybody was ready to, let's hang the banner. We don't even need to play the rest of the series and that sort of stuff. And then it turned into the Warriors win Game 4, and it's now like, well, that's it. The Celtics can't possibly win. I think this has been a remarkably evenly matched series, even if the games haven't always been super close. The last couple, I think, or I guess the last one was pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it can be obviously 2-2 after 4 games, can go either way, but I think there's still a lot to be decided. But it's part of me is just glad we're still going. We still got at least a couple more games to go.
I had said going in that, and I said this like a week ago, that whoever wins Game 5 is going to win the whole thing. So big game tonight for both sides. See if we can break the pattern. It went Celtics, Warriors. So if the pattern stays, it goes back to Celtics, and if not, if it breaks, then it goes Warriors will be the first to win 2 in a row in this series. Be interesting. Back in Golden State, but I almost feel like home court doesn't matter that much in this series.
I think Boston is. Yeah, Boston's been very good on the road in the postseason. They've been very good on the road in the last 4 or 5 months or so. And they've also, the Warriors, I mean, they're not going to be bothered by anything, right? Their core guys have been there, done that. They've seen it all at this point. So nothing's going to throw them off as far as home court goes. So yeah, absolutely. It's, I think we're in a position where, now there's not a lot of surprises left, right? It's about execution at this point. It's about playing good. And what gives me a little bit of hope is we haven't seen Jason Tatum have that Jason Tatum game yet, like he had in Game 6 against the Bucks, where he went absolutely bonkers and couldn't be stopped. And I think he's starting to get to some of his spots with a little bit more ease. And then we haven't seen one of those Steph Curry games where he just doesn't have it, right? And that to me, that's coming. Whether that comes in enough time to help Boston out or not, we'll see. But I think there's a chance maybe we get those tonight. Maybe it happens in Game 6. Maybe one each night or something. But I do think we're getting close to one of those two things coming to fruition.
Yeah, and we'll see how Game 5 ultimately goes. Going to be an exciting one. But Keith, before we even get into that,
do you
hear that? Do you hear that sound?
Yeah, what is that?
I think is that a trade siren?
Is it?
We have an early trade to announce.
We have a trade.
Yeah, baby.
Here we go. We've got an actual trade in the NBA. Oh my gosh. I was so excited when this came over the news line. JaMychal Green. It's a minor trade, and I don't care. I'm still super excited.
There are no minor trades, only minor people.
That's right. I like it. So JaMychal Green. Well, let's break this thing down. What are all the particulars of this trade? What does this mean, and all of that? This is the first trade of what we're calling the summer of the trade, because there's going to be a lot of moves, I think, this summer. This is the first opening shot. This is the appetizer. So what's going on here?
All right, so we'll do the particulars first, and then we'll get into why and what it all means. So the Denver Nuggets are trading JaMychal Green in a protected 2027 first-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder for the 30th pick in this draft. So the draft that's 10 days from now, from when we're recording this. And then Denver will also get 2 second-round picks from Oklahoma City in 2023 and 2024. This will now leave the Thunder with 3 picks in this year's draft, number 2, number 12, and number 34. And the Nuggets will have 2 picks, numbers 21 and 30. And as well, obviously, Oklahoma City takes on JaMychal Green and his salary. We can get into all the details on that, too, just because they're really important. JaMychal Green had to opt in to his $8.2 million player option for next season, pending free agents. So that if they have any kind of option, or they have any kind of, or not an option, but they're just a free agent, they cannot be traded. So he had to opt in for next season at $8.2 million. That makes him now trade eligible. So he'll be sent to Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is sitting on pre-trade about 31-ish million in cap space before this trade happens. So they're going to be able to use some of their cap space to bring him in. That's how they're going to bring him in. And this will also, for Denver, will create an $8.2 million traded player exception. So we'll have that going forward as well. So a lot of moving parts on both sides.
So for Oklahoma City, is how much of this is just they've already got so many other picks, they can't feasibly make a pick, so why not just kick the can down the road and hope that number 30, I mean, odds are number 30 is going to turn into something better in the next draft. It's probably not going to be number 30 again. So what do you think about that from the Oklahoma City Thunder side, that you're getting a future pick, but ideally this will wind up being a better pick than the one that they're giving up in this trade?
Yeah, I did. That's exactly what this is to me for the Thunder. They're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit here and hoping, hey, in 2027, who knows what Denver will be by then? That's well past when Nikola Jokic's next deal or his current deal expires. It could be even when his next deal is wrapping up. He could be on like a player option that year or something like that. So we could see this turn into a really really good pick. We don't know what the protections are as of yet. My guess is probably some form of lottery protected, maybe top 10 or something like that. But what I think, or maybe even top 20, considering it was only the 30th pick. But for OKC, here's the key thing. They could have 15 players under contract going into next year. And that's standard contracts, not two ways. They do have one of their two-way spots filled as well. When you have that, it's really hard to bring in 4 new players via the draft. They also have, a handful of guys who are on non-guaranteed deals, like the Krejci's, his deal's half guaranteed, about $780,000. They have Theo Maledon, whose deal is fully non-guaranteed. Isaiah Roby's deal can be non-guaranteed if they pick up his team option. Kenrich Williams, he's non-guaranteed, but he's too good to just let go. We've got a couple team options, one of which is Mike Muscala. Maybe they could have let that one go and let him be a free agent. And then they've got Lou Dort. They're going to decline his team option, make him a restricted free agent, so then they have the control over re-signing him. But when you're the Thunder, if you're in this position, you don't have room to bring in 4 guys via the draft. You just don't. In the 34th pick, that's a little too high to be drafting a two-way player. We generally don't see that until we get to the middle of the second round. So that's really tricky now. And this is a team that's done pretty good in those early second rounders last year. That was the range where they got Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I also think this is a chance for them to say, hey, we get a pick we think will be more. You can't have a first round pick that's worse than 30, right. Unless in 2027 we have a couple expansion teams, then maybe. But that's, we'll play with the protections and see where that goes. But unless you think Denver is going to launch a dynasty here that's going to have them winning titles every year, why not kick it down the road a little bit, eat a little bit of money? They might even be able to flip JaMychal Green in a subsequent
That was my
trade.
initial thought too.
At $8.2 million, he could be somebody that, because I can't imagine they have a ton of interest in him for, they've already got a somewhat crowded front court, and they're in position to add, obviously, at the draft, another good young front court player. So, but this is what you do if you're Sam Presti. Take advantage. We've got some extra picks, or we can do this. We can turn that 30th pick into what will be likely a much better pick a few years from now. Kick the can down the road a little bit. Use some cap space that was going to expire anyway on July 1st, and off we go.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if JaMychal Green, especially when you look at the free agent list right now, who's out there, not a lot of wings. So there might be interest in JaMychal Green from other teams where you could then flip him and get even more assets for the future and make this trade look even better from the Thunder side. So it makes a lot of sense for them. For Denver, is this just about clearing a little bit of cap, or do you see this trade exception that they're generating actually being something that's in play? What, they've got a year to use it. Think they actually go that route and use it and add that salary back on, or is this just about we clear this money and then off we go from there?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. When you subtract Green's 8.2 million from the books for next year, I already projected that he would opt in for next season. But then you add the draft pick that they're getting at 30, which comes with a cap hold of about 2.2 million. There's a difference of about 6 million, so they'll end up roughly in the range of being about, let's see, they'll probably end up what is that? That's 6 million. So they'll end up, under the tax but probably by about 7 million, or I'm sorry, over the tax only by about 7 million ish. In that range, they're going to save about $6 million here. So that gets them lower. It does get them below the tax apron, so it does give them a little bit more potential wiggle room there. I think this was just about creating flexibility. If you're the Nuggets, if JaMychal Green's on the books at 8.2 million, that's JaMychal Green at 8.2 million. A trade exception can be anything. It can be, the other team just says, hey, we want off this guy $7 million, and now you're in position to do that or something like that. So it was a way for an expensive team to get slightly less expensive for a player who had kind of fallen out of their rotation. My guess is now Jeff Green's probably back next year. They'll bring him back. This will open up that spot fully for Zeke Naji, who actually had some really good moments for the Nuggets last season. And then they've got 2 picks too. They've got 2 players that they're going to bring in on the roster in this draft. And now 21 and 30. It's not like getting you up to like 10 or anything, but maybe that could get you up to 17, 16 if there's a player you really, really like or something like that you feel like you want to move up and go get. I know the internet had a ton of fun. They worked out Nikola Jovic, who it sounds a lot like Nikola Jokic, and he's also Serbian, and he's very, very well aware of the combinations there. What that reminds me of is when you have like 2 similarly named guys in a fantasy auction. And somebody like a jerk throws the one guy up to be, hoping they'll catch somebody spend, $50 on, somebody with a similar name. And they're like, no, I don't want the kicker from this team or whatever it is. So anyway, at any rate, but that's where we're at now. It's, first our first big trade of the off season. And, it was a pretty good one. Now, one other thing I want to touch on real quick. Mm-hmm. Why does this have to get done now? Oklahoma City's cap space, it's going to expire on July 1st. They're sitting, like I said, they're sitting on about $30 million in cap space or so, $31 million in change. They'll go down. They'll still have $23 million left that they can use to do other stuff like this if they want to. And trust me, there's a handful of teams that are looking to get off some money. But that goes away when we flip the calendar year over, because with OKC, we've kind of, I think, maybe falsely, put ourselves in this mindset of, well, they don't carry any big contracts, but they kind of do. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's salary jumps from 5.5 million to 30.5 million next year because he's in the first year of his rookie scale extension. Derek Favors is on the books at 10.2 million. Because he already opted in. He was the first player to pick up an option for next year. And then you've got a handful of guys who are drafted high to semi-high over in the last few years. They've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players all making between 3 million and 6.3 million. So that's how it all adds up. Then the really important one for them, they've got $27.4 million in dead money on the books from Kemba Walker last year. They've also got $1 million in dead money on the books. Can you guess who it's for without looking? This was a long-term 5-year stretch.
Oh, man. Took 5-year stretch.
Yep, they stretched almost $5 million over just about $1 million a year.
I know he wasn't on their team, but whenever I think of this situation, I always think of Josh Smith. Oh, gosh. But I mean, obviously, that's not the right team. That's the first name that I always think of when I think of that situation. Gosh, I can't even think of who it would be.
Kyle Singler.
No.
Yes. Last year, Kyle Singler dead money on the books for the Thunder.
I would have never gotten that.
Right? Yeah. So that's why, though, you add all those things up, and they're going to be an over-the-cap team, especially once you factor in re-signing Dort and things like that. So that's why they're motivated to use this cap space now. Now, They're not going to go crazy. I don't think they're going to take on 20 more million in salary from other teams. The only reason I say that is they certainly don't want to be a tax team. And you start messing around too much and take on too much dead money, then re-sign Dort for something in the $12 to $15 million a year range. Now all of a sudden you start knocking on the door being a tax team, and that's certainly not what they want to do. So,
correct.
But maybe another 8 to 10 million. Yeah, you could probably pull that off and figure that out as you go.
All right. Why don't we jump down south to New Orleans? Let's talk a little bit about Zion Williamson. It sounds like things have been kind of clearing up between Zion and the Pelicans. Sounds like they're getting on the same page, and that a deal will be coming. Zion Williamson will be staying long-term with the Pelicans. At least that's the message that's really coming. And the fact that this is coming from both camps. We've heard the Pelicans want to re-sign him. We've heard that Zion wants to resign him. We've heard from them directly. I think this deal gets done. The only question is, and we talked about this previously, what kind of protections are built in for the Pelican side in the event of a Zion injury? How do they structure things exactly? But it does look like, as much talk as there was about, Zion wants to get to New York and his family doesn't like New Orleans and all that kind of stuff that was going around over the last, year plus, it looks like Zion's long-term home for the foreseeable future anyway. You never know in this crazy NBA world. It's going to be New Orleans.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things at play with this one. Is I think if you read both sides, you're absolutely right. Both sides are saying all the right things right now. I think the only way it gets super contentious is if those protections start to get a little crazy. What the Pelicans want to do, that maybe Zion's can't box at that, is like, I don't know about all this, but I think this will get done. Unfortunately, and I'm not saying this is how this is going to play out, because I kind of don't think it's going to. But take the money, ask for a trade in a year or two if you want, right? We just know that's how the game is played. But part of me says, I bet you Zion looked at it and said, you know what this team could use? They could use me, and we could be really, really good. Because this team was pretty good by the time the playoffs rolled around. They pushed that Suns team. Now we saw the Suns were maybe a little more limited than what we thought, as they bowed out to the Mavs in 7 games. But still, the Pelicans, they've got some stuff. I mean, they're deep. And when I did their offseason preview, it really struck me. They've got about 12 guys who can legitimately play, but a couple of those guys are veteran guys that I don't think need to play. And they've got a couple veteran guys that probably need, let's just call it what it is, rest days here and there. So I think their rotation will sort itself out. I'd be very surprised if they push Zion overly hard in back-to-backs and those kind of things. You might see that be one where, he takes a back-to-back off or something like that. But yeah, I mean, in the end, this is great. I think this is great for the NBA, because we want those big stars stay home, keep building it up, until it gets to a point where it's like, all right, you've done all you can. Now, if you want to move on, like Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, if that's where they eventually get to, that's understandable. But in this case, you've played 85 games in 3 years. If somebody offers you a max deal, you better sign it.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm Zion's agent, I'm saying you take that thing. Yeah. Because who knows what
you take that, and we're going to do everything we can to keep you healthy.
Absolutely. Exactly. Speaking of max deals, well, we talked about Zion already, but Ja Morant should be getting a max as well from the Memphis Grizzlies. No surprise there. I know it's mostly died down, but there was always that kind of little bit of chatter out there about, well, how good is he really if the Grizzlies are actually playing better without him and all that kind of stuff. He is really, really, really ridiculously good. Yep. I think this is a no-brainer for Memphis. He was fantastic for them. And not only is he good, but he's good on the court and off the court in terms of the kind of attention that's being drawn to the Grizzlies. For a franchise that needs this kind of buzz around them, I think he is just huge for this organization moving forward, again, on and off the court. Absolutely massive. So this is a no-brainer decision for Memphis.
Yeah, and what's going to happen with Jaws, too, is he'll get that designated player language, where if he makes All-NBA again, or MVP, even if he can, win that, which, I mean, I don't think he will win MVP next year, but I'm certainly not taking it completely off the table. That's how good he is. But as long as he makes All-NBA next year, then he'll get that designated language, which will bump him up a salary tier, probably up to that 30% max tier with that. Zion's probably not going to get that language just because of the injury concerns. He'll get the injury protection language instead, is my guess there. But these two guys, we'll see about Zion. one of the things I've been floating around is maybe in exchange for the injury protections, the Pelicans give him a 5th-year player option. Just kind of say, hey, we'll let you get out early, but we need protected in case it all goes sideways on us. Ja will get that 5th-year player option. Absolutely. Those had gone away for a while, but they're starting to come back now. We're seeing like Jason Tatum got it. Donovan Mitchell got it. The best of the best will get them. And Ja's certainly in that category.
Like, it's useful for these players, but I also feel like there's an element of that 5th-year player option being kind of a status symbol for the player as well, right? I mean, that's like it matters, but it's also, look, my team is willing to give me everything they possibly can. That's the level I'm at, right? So I think that's something that matters too, because on the surface you just think, well, what's the big deal? 5th-year player option, you're getting millions upon millions of tens of millions of dollars regardless, but I think it does matter to these max level stars.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and the best of the best get them. Trae Young and Luka and their extensions that'll kick in this coming season both have them as well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, tear down, right, from those two guys. I think we would all agree. He did not get one. Let me double check and make sure that is correct. He did not get one, and the same with Michael Porter Jr. Did not get one, and then he's got some protections in his final year in case of injuries. So we're starting to see teams. There's give and take, right, on these things. It's not all max extensions are created equal anymore. Where it's you get your 5 years, it's your 5 years, and we go. There's also for a long time it was everybody got a player option. It was like, you could be the 45th best player in the league and you were getting a player option. And it was a little like, all right, why are we giving everybody so much power? But now we're in a spot where there's tiers to this stuff. And that's good, right? That's the way it should be.
All right. Moving on to Bogdan Bogdanovic. Knee surgery for him. Never good. You're hearing about knee surgery for a player. What's the outlook here? Is this could this change offseason trade talks?
Yeah, maybe they're saying 6 to 8 weeks before he can play. This was not shared by the Hawks. As far as I know, I don't think the Hawks have still said anything on this, but it was his Serbian national team doctor was the one who shared this, that he was not going to be able to play in Eurobasket, which is a big international competition in Europe this summer because he recently had surgery. So and it wasn't that he got hurt there. This was an injury from the time with the Hawks. He was just sharing why he wouldn't be able to play. And he said they said 6 to 8 weeks. So now he should be fine, right? 6 to 8 weeks. Sure. He should be plenty ready to go before the start of next season. But it does, it's just one question that now needs to be asked is, right, hey, how's his knee doing? We saw that bothering him in the playoffs, including he missed game 5 of the Hawks Heat series in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, probably nothing to worry too much about. Should be ready for training camp and all of that. But I mean, we know the Hawks are going to be a team that is motivated to make a move. And so I'm just curious to see if that does anything at all to his trade. Maybe the answer is no, and it's nothing, and we just move on. But I am interested to see if any teams are a little bit more cautious on the trade front in terms of the value they would give to him because of this.
Hawks are going to do there's just too much buzz around the Hawks right now. They're going to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but they're going to do something this summer. I think it might end up being something big.
All right. Speaking of buzz, look at that. It's almost like I'm a professional here. Kenny Atkinson to the Hornets. The Hornets, they've settled on their coach. They figured out who it's going to be. Sorry, it is not Mike D'Antoni. Instead, Kenny Atkinson. And you know what? When they were down to D'Antoni and Kenny Atkinson, I just went, yeah, I mean, whichever one you go with, good job. Good hire. Like, I think there was no real wrong answer there. And they ultimately go with the more player development geared coach. Makes sense for a young team. Mike D'Antoni, offensive coach, very offensive team. Makes some sense there too. But Kenny Atkinson, I think he's a good coach. He was in the running with the Lakers as well. And now he goes from being an assistant with the Golden State Warriors to back to being a head coach once again with the Charlotte Hornets. I think it's going to be a good fit. And I have nothing negative to say about this hiring.
Yeah, nothing's been announced yet. My assumption is they're going to wait at least another week or so here until the finals wraps up, and then
Sure.
they'll come out and announce this to let Atkinson get through that. But that doesn't, because it's so funny, right? I'm sure you get the same thing. It's like Woj or Shams or Chris Haynes or Stein or whoever tweet something, and then the team doesn't announce it, and
Yeah.
it's like, what happened? Is it not happening? Did it fall
Right.
apart? And
there was a week
none of
between
that, I'm sure.
Darvin Ham being announced by Woj
Yes.
or whatever, and then
Yeah.
the Lakers actually announcing it. So there was a point there where people were going, and in between there, we had the Quinn Snyder situation. So everybody went, whoa, what just did the Lakers just bail on Darvin Ham? Now they're going after Quinn Snyder. Is that why it hasn't been announced? Of course, that was never actually a thing, but just that was what I was dealing with in Lakerland.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all with that. So yeah, let's see. This will get announced. My guess is, like I said, in a week or so, and then but we already talked about it a little bit when we talked about it as a candidate. I think it's a great hire for the Hornets. Good chance for them to develop some talent and keep things moving.
All right, as if we didn't have enough reason to go to Summer League this year, James Wiseman. Sounds like he's going to be playing in Summer League, which is great. Been dealing with injuries, hasn't played. And to get him back out on the floor, the former number 2 overall pick, I think this is going to be important for the Warriors for him to get back out there and kind of rebuild that confidence. I would imagine he'll be the kind of guy that'll play maybe the first couple of games and then not play after that. But I'm kind of excited to see him back out on the floor and see if he can start to shake off some of that rust and fulfill some of the potential that everybody saw in him around draft time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, the Warriors are playing in 2 different summer leagues. They're hosting the 2-day California Classic, and then they are going to Las Vegas with everybody else. So in the California Classic, my guess is maybe he plays in one of those, and then he plays in a couple games in Vegas. They also said Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody are both expected to play as well, which is pretty loaded.
That's going to be a good summer league team.
Yeah, that's a pretty good start. Now, what's funny is they made wreck everybody in the couple games they play together and then not play at all and then lose early in the playoff tournament round, whatever the heck they do now. They change it every year, and I can never keep track of it, just kind of keep looking at the schedule to see who's playing. But he went Shams Charania and Anthony Slater had a report today that he went to London in April with Warriors GM Bob Myers, and he had one of those platelet-rich therapies done, which just seems to have him feeling pretty good. He's been sprinting for weeks now and has had no pain and no recurrence of the swelling, which is what knocked him out. Because if you remember, we thought he was close in March. We did. It sounded like he was going to play, and then he had some swelling and got shut back down after a couple of stints in the G League. So now it sounds like that's good, and he's been cleared to go, or he'll be cleared, I guess, in the coming days to go through full contact workouts. So my guess is which is as crazy as it sounds, in about 3 weeks, we'll see him on the floor in Summer League.
That's right. Gosh, I'm excited. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Speaking of awesome, Taylor Jenkins gets a multi-year extension with the Memphis Grizzlies. This is great. I thought he was the coach of the year. I can't argue too much here, but I thought he was coach of the year. Did a fantastic job with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies suffered numerous injuries and still stayed afloat, kept on winning games. Mm-hmm. And Taylor Jenkins has really proved himself. So well-deserved multi-year extension for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is another core member of that franchise locked up. Zach Kleiman, their GM, signed an extension last year. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a contract extension kicking in. We already talked about Ja Morant and now Taylor Jenkins. So the Grizzlies are getting all their kind of key guys locked up as they go. Did you know last year tied their franchise record for wins in a season? I didn't know that until today.
I did not know that.
Yeah, 56 wins.
Learning something new all the time on the NBA front office show.
Grizzlies factoids, Kyle Singler. There we go.
Speaking of which, let's get even further into education here. Deandre Ayton, the logistics of a trade, because look, it's coming now from multiple sources. We talk about smoke. We've got a lot of people talking now about Deandre Ayton. He's probably done with the Suns. He's going to go somewhere else, but trading him, particularly because it's probably going to be a sign and trade. He's going to be a restricted free agent. The Suns, they're going to want something back for him. So the fact that he's going to be in a sign and trade scenario, that adds some complications. Plus base year, that's going to complicate things as well. So what does this look like? Because I know fans of a lot of teams around the NBA right now are thinking, could we get Deandre Ayton? But it's not quite as easy as just trade player A and B in exchange for Deandre Ayton.
Correct. So let's assume DeAndre Ayton leaves the Suns, and let's just assume it's a max deal that he's signing somewhere else. Because it's if not, it's going to be really, really close. The reason why I'm saying that is that makes the math very easy on me to do the math. So let's just say the max deal. Let's just say it's $30 million even. It's really 30.5, but 30 million just to make it easy. What that means is that really puts basically 3 teams kind of in range of being able to trade for him. Or being able to sign him rather outright. That's the Detroit Pistons, Indiana Pacers, and possibly Orlando Magic. The Magic are going to be in line to draft one of the best 3 bigs in the draft with the number 1 overall pick. They've got Wendell Carter Jr. They're probably not going that direction. The Pacers, maybe Miles Turner, they do something different and they want to go that way. Maybe we could see that. And the Pistons, sure, right? They're fully there. And if the Pistons want to go that route, they can. Anybody else, it's going to have to be a sign and trade. Here's where it gets really complicated. In a situation where you use bird rights to re-sign a player and you're over the cap, which the Suns would be doing both of those with DeAndre Ayton, and let's say they give him $30 million, let's just call that the max. He only counts on the Suns side as $15 million in outgoing salary. Right. So he only counts for half. So that means they can only take back roughly, let's call it about 20-ish million or so in salary back in a trade. So that's really imbalanced because another team, he counts for the full amount, that 30 million. So you need to either find one of those teams with cap space. So Detroit, Indiana, San Antonio, Orlando, they can help facilitate if they want to, if they're going to get something out of it. That could be a way you rebalance, because to take in 30 million, you need to send out roughly, call it 26 million in that range, about 24 million really. So that's an imbalance, right? And that's why they make these hard, because they don't want the idea of just re-sign the player and flip them right away and assign and trade in these situations. So base year compensation is really, really tricky to work around, and it can cause a pretty big mess in these immediate sign and trade transactions. Now, if they re-sign him, let's say the Suns re-signed him and kept him, they keep him, that goes away. And he would be his full salary amount, but he wouldn't be able to be traded until January 15th, because that's the other restriction. If you sign a player to a contract that would trigger base year compensation, you're restricted until January 15th on trading that player. So there's some complications there. One other thing I don't want to add just really quickly. I'm hearing on all these podcasts and all these places that are doing, rampant speculation of, hey, here's 7 DeAndre Ayton trades I thought of. Trading DeAndre Ayton a sign and trade that also involves draft picks, it's basically impossible, because one, you'd be violating the crap out of the tampering rules.
Right.
Right. So there's number one, right? That's the NBA doesn't even need to do an investigation. They would know you tampered. The other thing is, and
that's because the draft is before Ayton would actually sign as a free agent, just to clarify that.
Yep. The other thing that's really important to note is it's a sign and trade. It is not a trade and sign. So DeAndre Ayton still has control. So let's say the Suns said, hey, OKC, we want the second pick. And OKC's like, great, we want DeAndre Ayton. Let's do this. And then DeAndre Ayton's like, I don't want to go to OKC. He doesn't sign that. He doesn't agree to go. So that's that's why anything that involves a sign and trade for a player with draft picks, just put it out the window, throw it away. It's not going to happen, because it's just way too hard. There's too many moving parts on those. I still continue to believe DeAndre Ayton will leave the Phoenix Suns, and will leave the Phoenix Suns via sign and trade as the most likely path. But it'll be more complicated in a bigger trade than what it looks like on its face.
Well, I think we need to mention here too, like, even if it is a cap space team, like say the Pistons, it might still end up, it'll probably still end up being a sign and trade because they'll need to pay something in order to convince the Suns not to just match the contract. So when you say there's no draft picks, it could be a future draft pick, right? The Suns could decide, you know what, we're going to do a sign and trade, $30 million into the Pistons cap room, and then we're going to get a $30 million trade exception, plus they're going to give us a future first or whatever it is.
Or it could even just be a junk first, right? Sure, if it was already decided. Yeah. I mean, like, look at what the Celtics did with Gordon Hayward. They paid the Hornets a couple of seconds to make it a sign and trade. They're like, hey, we take these to make it a sign and trade so that they could create a nearly, $28 million, whatever it was, sign and trade or a trade exception, rather.
The other thing I think we need to address, just for the sake of history here, is why have base your compensation? Why have this be a thing? It doesn't feel like, anyway, to me, that long ago. It was a good while ago, but so the NBA, they wanted to try to incentivize players to stay with the incumbent team, to stay with the team that drafted them. And so then they gave advantages to teams who drafted those players in terms of signing them. They can offer them more money. Well, what players started to do was sign the contract with the incumbent team and then demand a trade. So they would get the best of both worlds. They would get all the money that they were possibly owed because a new team couldn't pay them quite as much as their current team. So they would get the money, and then they would get to go to the team that they wanted.
And the additional year too. Yep.
And there was an additional year, and the teams were cooperating with this because they were saying, well, this is better than losing the player for nothing. But the NBA didn't like the optics of it, of players constantly re-signing and then forcing their way out. And so they tried to make this a bit more complicated, a bit more difficult for this to take place. So that's why you see this. It's because it's a reaction to what happened in the past. And so the NBA tried to kind of legislate that out, or at least make it a much more difficult situation to try to negotiate a sign and trade.
Exactly. And all these things are put into, if you want to do it, you guys got to get creative to make it happen. And we do see these happen sometimes, like the Pacers, for example. Even if they couldn't get there, they could do Ayton for Miles Turner and some cap space, maybe. And that's a way you could do, a trade like this if that was the way they really wanted to go. There's indications. Mark Stein, I think, was the latest one to add his thoughts on it. It doesn't look like Turner's going anywhere, but just because they're a cap space team, likely this summer we'll throw them in the mix here on this one. But yeah, it is very interesting. I still, like I said, I think Ayton does get signed and traded somewhere. I think that's how this resolves. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult, and you may see one of those teams pulled in, or a team with a big trade exception or something to help balance off the money for all sides.
All right. Last thing that we've got today is the withdrawal deadline for the NBA draft. So good, just important. I mean, not huge. Like, pretty much we know who's going to be in, who's out by this point, but just something to check off on your calendar as we do progress towards that NBA draft.
Yeah, so what will happen is probably sometime tomorrow-ish, we'll get the full list from the NBA of the early entry players who are available. The NCAA deadline was June 1st for players who wanted to retain their college eligibility. This is for everybody else. So mostly international players is who this impacts. There's occasional NAIA guy or something like that, or a G League player or something like that. I think probably the biggest thing that came out of this, there's this kid, Leonard Miller, who kind of came on the scene a little bit late. He's a Canadian kid. He's about 6'11", kind of a bouncy athletic kid, pretty good skills. He's looks like he's got some development work to do defensively. He withdrew from the draft. He would have likely been a high second round pick. This year he's going to play for the D League Ignite this season, upcoming season, and then he'll re-enter the draft next year as a early entry player. And when he does that, there's thought if he plays well with the Ignite, he could play himself into the first round. So that's probably the most notable thing to come out of that. His soon-to-be teammate, Scoot Henderson, I don't know if you saw this, he signed the largest non-draft eligible player contract ever. He signed it with Puma, an endorsement contract with them, where he's going to make a crap ton of money, it sounds like, to endorse Puma sneakers, and then he'll be back. Which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool to see like Puma and some of these other I hate to call it this, but forgotten shoe brands like get back into the game again with some of these guys. So yeah, Scoot Henderson, he's projected to be a very high lottery pick next season. He played for the Ignite last year, but he was a reclassification player, so he's not draft eligible this year. So he'll play one more year with the Ignite too. So we're seeing some of these alternate paths to the league really start to take off.
Whole new path into the NBA.
10 days away. From the draft.
Unreal. I got to pick up the pace on all my pre-draft stuff.
I know, right? I've been now I feel like I went from the slow studying process and all that, and I'm like, all right, I can't spend whole days on prospects anymore. Like now it's like, okay, cool. I watched like 6 YouTube videos. I read like 13 articles on the guy. I think I have a pretty good understanding of what at least other people think he can and can't do. Because I spent days on Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Paulo Banchero, like probably at least like 2 full days watching stuff, reading stuff, going back and looking at old notes and those kind of things just to try to get a handle on those guys. The rest of them now, it's really turning into like, all right, I got to get 2-3 guys in when I can around. And trust me, I'm not complaining that I still have finals games to cover. By no means is that a complaint. It's just a different kind of year.
That's for sure. That's for sure. All right. Why don't we wrap things up there? That way I can get this out before Game 5 actually starts. But it's an exciting time in the NBA. I want to thank everybody for joining us over here in the NBA Front Office Show. Make sure you do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to come find us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Leave us that 5-star review and rating, and then leave us a little message as well. We certainly do appreciate those. Till next time, everybody.
Tell some friends too, because we're getting ready to get into it probably, I would say, later this week. We're probably going to get into some free agent rankings and things like that because there's only at most there's 3 basketball games left this year. So we're going to start getting into stuff and news and all that. And I think we're really honing in on doing a live draft show here on the channel. Probably the first round. We'll probably break after the first round and let everybody enjoy the second round on television. But join us for that. We'll be doing questions and answers throughout the draft and everything else, and you'll see me probably turn gray before your eyes as I'm trying to update cap sheets as trade news happens. But no, this is what this channel's for, guys. It's for this time of year, in particular, very much so. And we're super duper excited about everything that's coming. So tell a friend, help get us there. We're almost at 18,000. So let's get us wouldn't it be nice if we got to 18,000 subscribers as the Celtics raised banner 18? Boy, that would be synergy right there. And I'm sure both of us from the bottom of our hearts would absolutely love every second of that synergy.
That would not be so nice. That would not be nice. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, though. We'll end it with that. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.